about that. A little technical problem on this end. I accidentally hit the camera and it folded, and then somehow I lost it. But in any case, we're back. And by the way, I'm showing you a map right now, electoral map of what the Trump campaign believes is their path to 270 electoral votes. Under this scenario, they'll actually get 279. It requires them holding on to Michigan. And actually, I'm sorry, this is the fun map we're playing with right here. That's the 269 to 269 Electoral College Tie, So 2020, of course, we're going to have an Electoral College tie because of everything else that's happened this year. In order to get there, it requires the exact same map as 2016, but it would require that Joe Biden picks up Pennsylvania and Michigan. Trump holds Ohio and Wisconsin. If you do that and you have the exact same map as 4 years ago, we got a tie, and then it goes to the House of Representatives. Now, I was saying, yeah. Don't go there, Schuster. Okay, and we're going to get some more comments as we go here. Now, I was saying before we lost the camera, and by the way, hello to Lucia from Santo Domingo. Hello from Brett from Los Angeles. Nice to have you with us. Hello, David Benaim from New York. Great colleague. So, as I was saying, President Trump is trying to take advantage right now of what's been going on in Philadelphia to try to scare suburban women. We had a question in the last time we chatted this a few minutes ago with one of the chats where somebody said, well, what about suburban women? What's the influence? And right now, suburban women across the country are polling 20 points ahead for Joe Biden than Donald Trump. What Donald Trump is trying to do is frighten them and say, look, if you elect Joe Biden, there's going to be menace in the suburbs. Everything that you don't like about what's going on in the inner cities, that's coming to the suburbs. And what he's doing is he held up, for example, some of the images of what happened with George Floyd over the summertime. Right now, the president has been talking a lot about what happened a few nights ago in Philadelphia, where police shot and killed an African-American man. The man apparently had a knife on him, but witnesses say the police did not need to use that excessive force. Regardless of what happened there were protesters, and then there were scuffles with police, and some 30 police were injured 2 nights ago. There were more protests more clashes between protesters and police last night. So now the National Guard is on the streets of Philadelphia, and what Donald Trump was trying to do to appeal to the suburban women voters is he's commenting about the rioters and the looters. What I first want to do is I want to play for you a comment that President Trump made about what's been going on in Philadelphia, and then after that I'll show you an ad. Watch. Black Lives Matter. All right, so there's the president saying that Joe's all talk when it comes to law enforcement and police, but the president is making the argument, at least in those comments, that Joe Biden is somehow soft on crime, that somehow Joe Biden supports Black Lives Matter, which Joe Biden has said he does, but Black Lives Matter isn't necessarily responsible for the violence and the mayhem that is happening in some of these cities. But if you look at the latest Trump ad that they also cut to back up the president's strategy of frightening, particularly suburban women, here's the ad. I will say it's from the ads that I've seen, it's fairly amateurish in terms of, but maybe it's effective in terms of the Trump scare tactics. I think this is so over the top that it's not effective, but here it is anyway. Watch. Look, I think it was over the top. I mean, you can't, people don't, and it's entertaining, I guess. I mean, the idea that, there's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris superimposed over fires and all sorts of crazy stuff going on, but it just seems so bizarre. I think it appeals to people at the fringes. I don't think it necessarily moves people who are in the middle, but that's just from my experience of covering politics for so many years. By the way, some interesting questions we've already gotten about the electoral map, and I'm going to go over to the comments and try to read them. My cursor's a little bit slow tonight. Sorry about that. Bruce writes and says, I was listening to NPR today, and they were talking about polls in Texas and how the polls were not that of great quality, and it's less likely to flip than the polls say. What are your thoughts on that? I do think that a lot of these state polls are not very good quality, and for anybody who's taken statistics, you need what's called a statistically significant sample. You need, and generally, I was taught when I was at college by my favorite statistics professor that if you're doing some sort of survey, you need a survey of between 850 to 1,000 in order to deal with sampling error and have a poll of significance, as they call it, statistical significance. A lot of these state polls are being done with 300 or 400 voters who are called, and I think that's a mistake. I think those polls are not very good. However, when you look at polls like what the New York Times just did in Michigan, in which they found Joe Biden up by 8 points in Michigan, or what was done by a pollster in Wisconsin, both of those polls had at least 900 to 950 or 1,000 people who were part of the poll. I think that's a more legitimate poll than some of these other state polls that have 200 or 300. And again, it has to do with statistics that we're not going to get into now. But in any case, really, we get enough of this on TV already. Ugh, says Marge. Okay, well then turn it off, Marge. Top commenter Lucia says, "Oh Lord." Another person says, "Keep America safe. We are winning in COVID." That's a good point. And I actually have it queued up here, and we might as well play it. Thanks for your comments. I can't read it. Locomoso, I think it is. That's not the right name, but my glasses are not that good. Donald Trump says that the COVID numbers are way down right now, that we've got control of COVID, even though we just surpassed 227,000 deaths in the United States. And a couple of days ago, we had the highest number of daily infections that we've had since the pandemic began. And we have the highest number of weekly infections since the pandemic began. And 40 states over the last 40 hours saw their highest spike. Despite all of that, President Trump says that we've got it under control. Here's what he was trying to say about COVID-19. Let me, if I can move this over. It's damn cursor. Sorry about that. I shouldn't be swearing. It's not nice. What happens is my cursor gets stuck. I have one of these roller cursors where you have to use your finger, and I think because there's a light under this thing, it heats it up. So maybe I can't play that sound. There we go. Okay. Oh, there we go. Here it is. Watch. No, we don't really need to talk about body language, but to the point. President of the United States is trying to convince people that a vaccine is on the way, that we've got this under control, that had it not been for him, we would have had 1 million deaths from COVID-19, not 200 some thousand. The other day, he also stated that the numbers are being inflated, that many more people are dying from pre-existing conditions or heart attacks or heart issues or lung issues, and then doctors somehow just write down COVID-19 as the cause of death. According to Donald Trump, he says, well, it's because doctors get paid more or the hospitals make more if it's a COVID death. That's not true at all. And the idea that, people are deliberately ascribing a cause of death to COVID-19, I think is, well, you'll have to make your own judgment about that. I don't think it's credible. And I also don't think most Americans believe it. However, that's what the president has been doing in terms of his strategy. I want to get back to some of your comments. If I can move my cursor over again. Oh, here's Joe Biden's message about that last night. All right, pretty good ad by Joe Biden. And again, it gets to the effort by the Biden campaign to try to energize African Americans, for Biden to be unequivocal about embracing Black Lives Matter, even though Donald Trump was trying to use that against him and to say that Joe Biden somehow supports chaos in urban cities, moving out to the suburbs. But putting that aside, Joe Biden does an effective job not only of embracing African Americans and Black Lives Matter, but then he broadens it out. So you may resonate to the message, I support Black Lives Matter, I embrace it, or I'm for Black Lives Matter, as Joe Biden says at the beginning, but then he ticks off for the next 55 seconds all the things that he would do in terms of his economic policy, handling COVID-19, jobs, it goes on and on. So it's an effective ad in which politicians say, sometimes the best ad is one that can appeal to a variety of groups, that a particular group that is listening for how a politician, what their plan is for COVID-19 or for the economy, will hear that in the ad. But this is an ad that also checks off the box in terms of Joe Biden trying to boost his African-American support, which at least according to some of the polls is a little bit softer than it was for Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. And that's something the Biden campaign is trying to work on. A couple of questions, including from David Benaim, who writes, let's just assume we've got the map up here, the 269-269 tie in the Electoral College. And again, this assumes that Joe Biden carries Michigan and Pennsylvania, two states that Hillary Clinton lost 4 years ago, that Donald Trump holds on to Wisconsin and Ohio, and that the rest of the map is exactly the same. And so, again, the assumptions are that Biden's slight lead in Arizona, that's wrong, that Georgia goes to Trump, that Florida goes to Trump, that Texas goes to Trump, that North Carolina, some polls suggest, which Biden has a slight lead, that goes to Trump. But let's assume the same map as 2016, but with the four states in the Midwest, Wisconsin and Ohio going to Biden, Trump holding on to Michigan and Pennsylvania. Under the 269-269 tie, what happens is it then goes to the U.S. House of Representatives, and each state delegation gets one vote. Now, it gets complicated because there are some states that have 40 representatives or more, like California. Then you have some states that have only a few representatives. And what each state is expected to do is they would cast a vote. So presumably California, of course, more Democratic congressman than Republican, they would cast the California vote for Joe Biden. When you look at the number of states in terms of which party controls the delegation at the moment, it is Republicans. Somebody's going to correct me on this because I'm going to get it wrong. But the delegations are 26 states, I believe 26 or 27 states where the delegation has a majority number of Republicans. I believe it's 23 that are Democrats and then another 4 that are ties. One of the things that's been so interesting about Nancy Pelosi is they have poured in a lot of money in a couple congressional districts in states where it's either a tie or where they expect that perhaps that they can flip a congressional seat, that can flip the math, and therefore if the nightmare scenario happens for the Democrats and it does go to the House in terms of determining how to break an electoral college tie, that somehow the Democrats would get up to 25 states. If the Republicans have 25, that's fine, and then the tie break is cast by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat. And of course that still assumes that the Democrats control the House, but by every indication they're going to pad their lead. Democrats will have probably a plus 30 plus 35 to 40 edge in the House. And in fact, David Benaim says might actually be 25-25 with a 2021 Congress. It's possible. Democrats would have to flip some tough seats, but anything's possible. A lot of people suggest that if there is this blue wave, if there is this Democratic tsunami that's out there that's going to sweep Democrats into a 54-46 or 55-45 edge in the U.S. Senate, you would expect a lot of state, in terms of House races, to flip as well, and that perhaps the Democrats are able to at least get to the 25 state delegations where they would have a majority. It's interesting stuff. 100% Russia's helping. What do you think he owes money to Putin, says the stay boy. Okay, thanks for that. I honestly thought it was going to be a close race because people are going to be people. However, anymore, I really don't see Trump pulling it off. This gets to the ultimate divide that we have right now. Democrats are, I'd say, still shell-shocked from 4 years ago when so many polls suggested that Hillary Clinton was going to win, that she was going to coast to victory. And again, Hillary Clinton was up 6 points over Donald Trump in 2016 in Pennsylvania. She was up 0.7 over Donald Trump in North Carolina. She was up nearly 6 points over Donald Trump in Wisconsin. She was up 7.0 over Donald Trump in Michigan. She lost each of those states: Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. The pollsters say that their mistake was undercounting people with a lower education and not taking education into account. The polls also suggested that they undercounted support for Hillary Clinton in the U.S. Southwest because Hillary Clinton exceeded some of the poll numbers, for example, in places like Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico. But the theory goes that, once again, the pollsters have it wrong, particularly in the industrial heartland and the industrial Midwest, and that there's a sizable number of silent Trump voters who are going to show up if they haven't voted already, show up on election day, cast their ballots for Donald Trump. Maybe they've lied to pollsters. And once again, we're going to have Donald Trump somehow perhaps losing the raw vote totals, perhaps by 4 percentage points, but that he'll get enough electoral college votes to get beyond the 270 that he needs to win. Interesting, right? Thoughts on the, let's see. Hello from Los Angeles, says Mark Goldman. Mark, nice to see you. Yo, Connecticut here checking in. Synapse, nice to have you on board. Yeah, it's nice here in Lebanon, Connecticut, which is not too far from Hartford. People are extremely friendly in this part of the country. When are we supposed to look at the final number? Is there a governmental standard for the final deadline on vote counting, says Lobster Squid, or is it Lobster Squad? That's a good question. If you go back to the 2000 Florida recount, that stretched an extra 31 days. Or maybe it's 36 days past the November election. So the final court ruling came in the second week in December. There's something known in legal circles as the safe harbor, and that is the electors that formally declare who the president is going to be. That happens towards the end of December. So the theory is that you have until maybe the 19th, 20th of December to figure out, where are the electors going to, who are they going to support? How are they going to cast their votes? The Supreme Court, of course, had to settle the matter in the middle of December back in 2000. But the theory among most people is that, the country will survive, the republic will stand, even if we have an election that is not decided for a good 5 or 6 weeks after November the 3rd. Of course, the market tanked back in 2000. It lost something like 8%, and it wasn't a great time for U.S. influence around the world as people couldn't figure out who was in charge. But, we've been through this before 20 years ago if there was a tie. And I think everything will be just fine if there is again. But then you get to all sorts of questions about the Supreme Court and who's going to be weighing in on the cases. And Amy Coney Barrett, should she recuse herself because she just got nominated by President Trump and confirmed. And then, by the way, once she was confirmed by the Senate, then she took her oath at what was arguably a campaign rally at the White House a few nights ago. So anyway, no. So no for no Nevada for Trump, says Chris O. No, I think Nevada, I went to Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. The poll suggests that Nevada is a good 7 or 8 points for Joe Biden this time. I think Nevada stays in Democratic hands. Somebody is hiding every comment that they don't like, says Crazy Talk. I have nothing to do with the comments, so you can't blame me. But there are certain, we're a family-friendly app here. I mean, if people are going to use bad language or swear or disparage people, then you're not going to get a comment or you're not going to be part of the live chat. By the way, 126 live chats, which is remarkable because anybody who was watching the first broadcast saw that I messed up and somehow accidentally turned off my camera. Will be no tie, says Sarah Synapse. Biden by a landslide. All those mail-in votes are in. Don't skip comments, please, says something, I can't read it. The biggest illusion is that there is a race between two people. It's already fixed. Trump is rigging it right under the eyes of every American. Look, there are people on the left who are convinced that Donald Trump, when he saw that he was behind in certain key states and 4 years ago, called up somebody and they rigged the vote. There are people who are going to believe the vote is rigged now. There are people on the left who are going to believe that if Donald Trump pulls us out, that it was rigged for him. The Republicans were going to say that all these absentee ballots is massive fraud and that the Democrats have somehow come up with tens of thousands of extra ballots they don't deserve. It goes back and forth. Hopefully, the people who are essentially the middle of the country, which is generally where elections get decided by people who are not affiliated with parties, they will be the ones who will have to have some belief or some credibility that they'll see in the election results. How do you not have Wisconsin for Biden? Well, under this map, that's a good question. Why don't I have Wisconsin for Biden? And I'm going to put Wisconsin for Biden. If I can move my cursor, which of course I can't. Well, the reason this was just my, nightmare scenario of how we get to 269. If Biden gets Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, he wins this, even if he doesn't pick up North Carolina or Arizona. I think if Biden gets Wisconsin and say Michigan and Trump carries Ohio and Pennsylvania, then according to my math, and I've got it right here. Let's just suppose it's another map. Let's suppose that Biden carries Wisconsin and Michigan, Trump gets Ohio and Pennsylvania. Then at that point, in order for Biden to get over 270, he needs a pickup in either North Carolina or Arizona. And that assumes, of course, that Trump wins Florida, Georgia, Texas, Iowa, Iowa's another good state where polls suggest that it's within, Biden plus 1.4. Is that enough of a margin for Biden to carry? I mean, there's a really interesting Senate race. Somebody was just asking in the live chats about Joni Ernst. I think Joni Ernst is in severe trouble there, a Republican incumbent. And if Joni Ernst loses her Senate race badly, I think there's a good chance that you might see Joe Biden also pick up Iowa, which then, of course, negates these maps. We're just trying to have fun here, everybody. I'm not trying to be partisan, not trying to support one side or the other, just trying to look at some of what's going on in the world of presidential politics right now. And because we've had one hell of a year in 2020, explain my nightmare scenario of a 269 tie. I was just in Pennsylvania, says lobster salad. It didn't look good for Dems, LOL. Pennsylvania has been tightening. The latest poll suggests Biden is plus 3.8. A week ago, Biden, according to the Real Clear Politics average, was over 6. There does seem to be a couple of things that are at work in Pennsylvania, at least that I've seen. First of all, Donald Trump has made a very concerted effort to talk about fracking in Pennsylvania. Fracking is a huge issue. People largely believe in fracking. They believe in Pennsylvania that this has helped America get energy independence. So when Joe Biden talked about phasing out fracking at the last debate, that was an opportunity for Donald Trump. When Joe Biden also talked about phasing out dependence on oil by 2050, that's another thing that doesn't cut well for him politically in Pennsylvania. And one of the things, we did this a couple nights ago, Donald Trump, when he showed up at a rally in Pennsylvania a couple of nights ago, he actually played clips of Joe Biden saying, I'm going to end fracking. I'm going to end fracking. We're going to get rid of fracking. And then he played a clip of Joe Biden said, well, I'm not going to end fracking just yet. And so Donald Trump was trying to say, Joe Biden's, you don't know what to believe from Joe Biden. Bottom line, it was a smart strategy for Donald Trump. I don't think America needs fracking. And I think politically, if you had somebody like Bernie Sanders who says, we're going to stop fracking, I think for the votes that a Bernie Sanders might have lost in Pennsylvania, he might pick up in places like in Arizona or other states where I think, green policies may have more appeal. But in any case, Joe Biden has tried to have it both ways on fracking, and I think that has hurt him. And I think that's one of the reasons why he is trending downward in Pennsylvania. He may still win Pennsylvania. I mean, 3.8 is not terrible. But again, 3.8 plus 3.8 in Pennsylvania when Hillary Clinton was plus 6.0 in Pennsylvania 4 years ago, that would suggest that if there is this hidden vote of Trump supporters who are not willing to acknowledge to pollsters that they're going to pull the lever for Donald Trump, then maybe Biden loses Pennsylvania. But it's not the end of the world for Democrats if Trump wins Pennsylvania, or even if Trump wins Ohio. Again, the keys are Michigan and Wisconsin. If Joe Biden wins Michigan and Wisconsin and then gets a pickup of an Iowa, North Carolina, and Arizona, or just Arizona or just North Carolina, and then maybe Iowa plus, then he's over the 270 he needs. Am I the only person here who thinks the Green Party, Howie Hawkins, will win? No. Sorry, buddy, it's not hurting Joe. Okay, look, you're entitled to your argument that it is not hurting Joe in Pennsylvania to be against fracking. Michelle writes, Biden dared him to. He said he'd never said he'd ban fracking on debate. Is Florida likely to go to Biden? 538 has it as a pretty close call. My view is that I think because of 4 years ago, anything that is a close call, I think there is an argument that depending on the size of the survey and the size of the sample, I would not trust a poll that doesn't have at least 1,000 participants in it. Some of the polls that I've seen that show Florida being close have a sample of 500 or 600. I don't think that's enough. I don't think that's statistically significant. So my view is that if Florida is close now, I would, look, the Biden campaign has plenty of firewalls. They can afford to lose Florida. They can afford to lose North Carolina. They can afford to lose Arizona. It just depends, though, on them holding on to Michigan and Wisconsin and picking up a North Carolina, for example. So you only have a scenario where Biden wins. LOL, y'all will never learn. Funny. Jet Girl. Okay, Jet Girl, the scenario we have right now, that's a tie, 269 to 269. That's a tie. It's not Biden wins. It's not Trump wins. It's my nightmare scenario for what happens, for how we get to this mess of the House having to decide this thing. I think most electoral maps would show that. Look, if I can get my cursor to work here, which I still can't. I'll show you the map of how what happens if how Donald Trump wins. But again, my cursor is overheated. So you know what we're going to do? 183 live chats. This has been fun. We're going to do this again maybe tomorrow night or the night after. We'll update with some more polls. I'm going to get my mouse fixed so I can use some of these elements a little bit better. The computer gets very hot, and then for people who have, by the way, if anybody has any suggestions about how to, when you have one of these, have a mouse that depends on your fingertip, and then your fingertip either because the computer gets so hot that it doesn't pick up, even when I use the cold hand. So that's how it goes. And here's the funny thing is we're not going to be able to end this broadcast until until I can figure out how to move this mouse. So this is going to be interesting. Let's turn off the light here, see if that helps. Well, that's not going to help. Excellent job, says Cameron. Thank you. This has been great. Thank you, says Jabruce. Thank all of you. I appreciate it. And again, we have a little problem right now where I cannot end the broadcast because I can't get the cursor to work. So we're just going to have to do this all night long. GTV.org. Okay, plug in my mouse, my man. Don't use the trackpad. Exactly. That's what I'm going to do. I just have to find a mouse. Put it on a cool surface, says Michelle. I will put it on a cool surface. You deserve gifts, but I spent my gift budget. I spent lots of gifts today. Thank you. Really great broadcast. David Schuster, says Mark Goldman. Thank you. Crazy Talk says, you're doing great. Great show. Thank you. If only I could end it. Well, we could always do the hard end, and that is we just turn the computer off. So maybe we'll do that. And anyway, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you putting up with the tech issues. We're going to have some more fun at Haps TV. And by the way, you can also follow us on Quick Hits News, quickhitsnews.com. Go to our YouTube, subscribe to our daily show. It comes out each day about 5 o'clock. Okay. Somebody gift him. Somebody gift me a new mouse. Thanks, everybody.